Hey everyone, welcome back to the deep dive.
Yeah, great to be back with you.
We are tackling something today that's, I think, something everyone's felt at some point. It's
Yeah.
those times in life when you really feel like you're in the middle of a storm, right? Like life is just throwing everything it can at you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And maybe you're even feeling that right now. It could be anything, right? Could be work, could be family, just feeling overwhelmed and kind of like you're going under.
Yeah, I think most people listening can definitely relate to that feeling in some way or another for sure.
Totally. And what's really interesting is that even when those metaphorical storms are raging all around us, there's this really amazing source of peace and even control that's available to us.
That's it, exactly. And I really grasped that we're going to dive deep into a story that's been incredibly powerful and impactful for literally centuries.
Right.
Our deep dive today is going to center on some powerful biblical narrative, and we're going to be drawing insights specifically from Jesus in Your Boat, Finding Peace in Life's Storms.
Love that title.
Yeah, it's so good.
Really paints a picture.
It does.
And this ancient account, it really gives us a fresh perspective on how to stay grounded.
Right.
When life feels like it's about to completely capsize.
Yeah, that's the goal, right? To find that stability even when everything's chaotic.
Exactly. So the heart of this story that we're going to be unpacking is the disciples of Jesus, and they get caught in this absolutely ferocious storm on the Sea of Galilee.
Oh, yeah, this is a wild story.
Wild. They're out on the lake. They're doing exactly what Jesus told them to do, and all of a sudden, boom! This violent storm just comes out of nowhere.
It's funny how life can be like that sometimes, right? You think you're on the right path, you're doing what you're supposed to, and then wham, something unexpected hits you.
Totally throws you off course.
So true. And in the Gospel of Mark chapter 4, it tells us that evening came and Jesus said to his disciples, let's go over to the other side. So they set out in the boat and other boats went with them. Then the account says, a furious squall came up and the waves broke over the boat so that it was nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern sleeping on a cushion.
Can you imagine that? Like, I want you to really picture this for a second.
Yeah.
These are seasoned fishermen.
They know the water.
They know these waters like the back of their hand.
Exactly.
And yet, they are facing a storm so intense that they're completely convinced they're going to drown.
You got to figure they've been in storms before, right? But this
This is different.
This one's different. This one feels like the end.
Like the end, the boat is taking on water rapidly. They're bailing water. They're fighting desperately. And where is their leader? Where is Jesus?
Sound asleep.
Sound asleep in the back.
I mean, can you imagine the disciples' thoughts in that moment? The sheer panic.
The fear, yeah, and their reaction in that moment is so human and so relatable, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's raw. It's authentic.
They jolt Jesus awake, and their question is so telling. It's just dripping with this fear and sense of like abandonment. Teacher, don't you care if we drown?
It's like in that moment, they're questioning everything they thought they knew about him.
Don't you care about us? Don't you care about this mission?
Right. Exactly. And think about the vulnerability in that plea. They felt completely alone in their struggle, like the person they trusted most was indifferent to their fate.
And then Jesus does something that is so powerful, and it cuts through all the chaos.
Right.
He gets up, and the scripture says he got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, quiet, be still. Then the wind died down, and it was completely calm.
Just like that.
Just like that. It's instant,
Maybe appeased.
utter turmoil to complete stillness with a few words.
It's a pretty incredible image.
It is. And this is where I think the power of this ancient story really starts to hit home for us today. You know? Because just like those disciples in the boat, you and I, we face times when we feel completely and utterly overwhelmed.
Okay, no doubt.
Those challenges of life, they come in all shapes and sizes, and they feel like they're gonna crush us. We're going under. And it's in those really tough moments that I think we find ourselves maybe even wondering, does anyone even see what I'm going through? Is there any help out there?
Does anyone even care?
Exactly. And that's why it's so important for us to really recognize that these storms that we're talking about, they aren't always these like, big dramatic external events like a hurricane or something.
It's not always that obvious, right?
It's not always obvious. And the source that we're looking at today, it actually breaks down these different forms that these storms can take. And I found that really insightful.
Yeah, me too.
So first you have the storms of fear.
Yeah, okay.
So this is that kind of constant underlying anxiety, the doubts that creep in, the worry that just gnaws at you about what tomorrow might bring.
I think we all know that feeling, right? That constant kind of low-level hum of anxiety.
Absolutely. And then you have the storms of trials.
Okay, so these are the big ones.
The big ones. This is the really heavy burdens, like the grief of losing someone you love, the pressure of financial problems, the battles with your own health, or worrying about the health of someone you love.
Those are the ones that can really knock you down.
Yeah, they can leave you feeling just absolutely exhausted.
Drained, yeah.
Yeah. And then there are, and these are maybe the most unsettling, I think, are the storms of faith.
Oh, this is interesting.
Yeah, these are those times when you just feel so disoriented and your connection to something bigger than yourself feels strained.
Like you're unmoored.
Unmoored, exactly. Your prayers feel like they're just echoing back unanswered, and you even start to question what you've always believed.
It's like a storm within a storm, right? A spiritual crisis on top of everything else.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a storm within your own spiritual life.
Yeah.
And I think it's really valuable for you listening right now to take a moment and just ask yourself, what kind of storm am I facing right now?
Yeah, that self-reflection is so important. Just being able to name it can be a huge step.
Huge. Because here's a core understanding that comes out of this whole story of the storm on the lake.
Okay.
Jesus, the one who commanded that physical storm to stop. He is the same presence who can bring peace and calm to the storms that you are facing right now.
That's a powerful thought.
It is. And the source material we're looking at, it really emphasizes the authority that Jesus had.
Right, like it wasn't just a suggestion, it was a command.
A command, exactly. And just as his spoken word controlled the wind and the waves, that same inherent power is available to you in your own struggles.
It's like that authority extends to every aspect of our lives if we allow it.
If we allow it. Absolutely. And Scripture actually backs this up. Think about Psalm 46, those powerful opening verses. God is our refuge and strength, and ever-present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth give way, and the mountains fall into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam, and the mountains quake with their surging.
I love that imagery. It's so vivid.
Isn't it? It's not just about, recalling a miracle from the past. It's about recognizing that God is ultimately in control.
Yeah.
Even when things around us feel completely chaotic.
And not just present, but powerful too, right?
Right. It's not just that he's there. It's
Yeah.
that he has the power to do something about it. And the detail that Jesus spoke to the storm, that's incredibly significant.
Yeah. What do you think is so key about that?
Well, this is the same voice that created the universe.
Whoa.
And here that same voice is issuing a command to the elements, and they obey instantly.
It's like a demonstration of his power that's just mind-blowing.
Totally. And it leads to a question that I think a lot of people have when they're going through something difficult.
Yeah, what's that?
If Jesus had this kind of power, why did he let the storm happen at all?
Right, like why put the disciples through that?
Why not just prevent it and spare them the fear and the terror? The source material actually offers some really interesting possibilities.
I'm curious to hear them.
One of the key reasons is to cultivate trust. The disciples, they'd already seen Jesus do some incredible things, right? They'd seen him heal people, cast out demons.
They'd witnessed his power firsthand.
But this was a different kind of test. It was like, okay, you see what I can do now? Can you trust me even when you're in a life or death situation?
Even when it looks like I'm doing nothing.
Exactly. It's one thing to understand someone's power in your head, but it's a whole other thing to actually have to rely on it when you're facing something really scary.
It's like that saying, right? You don't know someone until you've been through a storm with them.
Exactly. And these storms in our lives, they can actually deepen our faith in ways that just wouldn't happen if everything was always smooth sailing.
Makes sense. It forces you to rely on something bigger than yourself.
Absolutely.
Wow.
You have to lean on something greater than your own strength and your own understanding. Another really interesting reason that the source highlights is to reveal Jesus's divine authority.
Okay, that's an interesting one.
Yeah, the storm's instantaneous obedience to Jesus's command. It wasn't just a coincidence. It was a demonstration of who he really was. It was a very clear and powerful sign of his divine nature.
And, when we bring that back to the bigger picture of our lives,
Yeah.
it suggests that even the really hard times, even the struggles we're going through right now, might have a deeper purpose.
I love that.
It's not always easy to see it when you're in the thick of it,
Yeah.
but those challenges can actually become opportunities for us to grow stronger in our faith, for our resilience to be tested, and to deepen our understanding of God's presence and power in our lives.
And that's such a critical reminder, because when you're right in the middle of the storm, all you can see are those waves crashing around you.
Totally. You can't see the horizon.
I can't see the shore. You just feel like you're going to go under.
Yeah.
But the core message here is that the difficulty you're facing right now, it's not the end of your story.
There's hope.
There's hope. And the source material actually references Romans 8:28, which is such a powerful verse. And we know that in all things, God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose.
Oh, I love that verse. It's such a good reminder that even when things are tough, there's a bigger plan at play.
And even though the journey through the storm might feel scary and exhausting, there's this underlying promise that there is a destination.
There's another side.
There's another side. Like Jesus said to the disciples, right? We're going to the other side. The process might be really hard, but it's not meaningless.
It has purpose.
It has purpose, and there's potential for something good to come out of it.
So for those listening who are feeling like they're in the middle of a storm right now, what are some practical steps they can take to find that trust and that peace?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And the source that we're looking at, it actually gives some really concrete suggestions.
Love that.
The first step is prayer.
Okay.
But it's not just any prayer. It's prayer with complete honesty.
So no sugarcoating.
No sugarcoating. Just like the disciples didn't hold back when they were talking to Jesus, you are encouraged to bring your real, authentic feelings to God.
So be real, be raw.
Be real, be raw. You don't have to try to sound eloquent or pretend you have it all together. Just tell him what you're feeling. The real power comes from being vulnerable and bringing your true self before God.
Yeah, that authenticity is key. It's about a genuine connection.
Absolutely. And then the second step is to declare his promises.
Okay, so remind yourself of what he said.
Exactly. It's about intentionally reminding yourself of specific scriptures, those verses that speak to God's faithfulness, his power, his love for you.
Do you have any favorites that come to mind?
Oh, there are so many. The one that always brings me comfort is Philippians 4:6-7. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus.
I love that one too. It's such a good reminder that peace is possible even in the midst of chaos.
And speaking of peace, the third step is to resist panic.
Okay, easier said than done sometimes.
So much easier said than done. But this is where the contrast between the disciples and Jesus is so important. The disciples are freaking out, they're terrified, and Jesus is calm.
So it's about choosing to focus on his peace instead of giving in to our own fear.
Exactly. It's a conscious choice, and it's not easy, but it's about remembering that you are not alone in your storm.
You got Jesus in your boat.
You've got Jesus in your boat. And then finally, and this might seem counterintuitive, but the source recommends worship.
Worship in the storm.
Worship in the storm.
Yeah.
Even when you're feeling your absolute lowest, shifting your focus for even a few moments from your fear to acknowledging God's presence and his power can be incredibly transformative.
So it's about shifting your perspective, even if just for a little bit.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing his sovereignty and his love, even when your circumstances feel really dark and difficult.
You know, and another thing the source brings up that I think is really important is personal testimony.
Oh, yeah.
I think hearing about how other people have gone through similar storms and come out stronger on the other side can be incredibly encouraging.
Oh, for sure.
It's like it gives you hope that you can do it too.
Totally.
Yeah.
Because it's one thing to hear about these principles in the abstract, but when you hear someone's story about how they actually lived through it and how their faith was strengthened by it.
Right. It becomes real.
It becomes real, and it becomes a source of hope for you.
Absolutely.
Right.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, the main message we want to leave you with is one of hope and support.
Yeah, whatever storm you're facing right now, you are not alone.
And the source shares this great verse from Isaiah 41:10. So do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand.
That's a promise you can really cling to.
Absolutely. So this exploration of the story of the storm on the Sea of Galilee, particularly through the lens of Jesus in your boat, it really brings us back to that central theme that Jesus' presence can offer you peace and a sense of control, even when the storms of life are raging.
Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive today.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
As you go about your day, we really encourage you to think about the storms you might be facing in your own life and how the things we talked about today can offer you guidance and strength.
And one last thought to ponder. What does it actually mean for you to have Jesus in your boat, in your life? How does that change your perspective when you're going through difficult times? It's a question worth thinking about.
It really is. Thanks again for listening.
See you next time.
See you later.